Hello, children. Here's another episode of The Story Place. I'm Anne Marie Battistone, and this is Norfolk Public Access. So I'm going to start right away here with my first story is First Tomato. And it's about how a boy copes with a bad day. Written and illustrated by Rosemary Wells. It's from 1992. Oh, I guess it's a little girl here, sorry. Claire ate only 3 spoons of cornflakes for breakfast, because you'll see what happens in the drawing. On the way to school, her shoes filled with snow. By 11 in the morning, math had been going on for 2 hours. Lunch was Claire's least favorite, bologna sandwiches. At playtime, Claire was the only girl not able to do a cartwheel. Once again, the bus was late. Claire needs a visit to the bunny planet. Far beyond the moon and stars, 20 light years south of Mars, spins the gentle bunny planet, and the bunny queen is Janet. Janet says to Claire, "Come in. Here's the day that should have been. I hear my mother calling when the summer wind blows. Go out in the garden in your old clothes. Pick me some runner beans and sugar snap peas. Find a ripe tomato and bring it to me, please. A ruby red tomato is hanging on the vine. If my mother didn't want it, the tomato would be mine. It smells of rain and steamy earth and hot June sun. In the whole tomato garden, it's the only ripe one. I close my eyes and breathe in its fat red smell. I wish that I could eat it now and never tell. But I save it for my mother without another look. I wash the beans and shell the peas and watch my mother cook. I hear my mother calling when the summer winds blow. I've made you first tomato soup because I love you so." Claire's big warm bus comes at last. Out her window, Claire sees the bunny planet near the evening star in the snowy sky. "It was there all along," says Claire. This next story is called Amelia Bedelia, and it was originally published in 1963, written by Peggy Parrish and illustrated by Fritz Seibel. And Amelia Bedelia gets a job as a maid in a beautiful house. "Oh, Amelia Bedelia, your first day of work, and I can't be here, but I made a list for you. You just do what the list says," said Mrs. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers got into the car with Mr. Rogers. They drove away. "My, what nice folks. I'm going to like working here," said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia went inside. "Such a grand house. These must be rich folks. But I must get to work. Here I stand just looking, and me with a whole list of things to do." Amelia Bedelia stood there a minute longer. "I think I'll make a surprise for them. I'll make lemon meringue pie. I do make good pies." So Amelia Bedelia went into the kitchen. She put a little of this and a pinch of that into a bowl. She mixed and she rolled. Soon her pie was ready to go into the oven. "There," said Amelia Bedelia, "that's done. Now let's see what this list says." Amelia Bedelia read, "Change the towels in the green bathroom." Amelia Bedelia found the green bathroom. "Those towels are very nice. Why change them?" she thought. Then Amelia Bedelia remembered what Mrs. Rogers had said. She must do just what the list told her. "Well, all right," said Amelia Bedelia. You know, children, this story is about the many meanings of words, individual words that can have more than one meaning. Amelia Bedelia got some scissors. She snipped a little here and a little there, and she changed those towels. "There," said Amelia Bedelia. She looked at the list again. "Dust the furniture." Did you ever hear tell of such a silly thing? At my house, we undust the furniture, but to each his own way. Amelia Bedelia took one last look at the bathroom. She saw a big box with the words dusting powder on it. "Well, look at that, a special powder to dust with," exclaimed Amelia Bedelia. So Amelia Bedelia dusted the furniture. Well, that should be dusty enough. My, how nice it smells. "Draw the drapes when the sun comes in," read Amelia Bedelia. She looked up. The sun was coming in. Adelia Bedelia looked at the list again. "Draw the drapes? That's what it says. I'm not much of a hand at drawing, but I'll try." So Amelia Bedelia sat right down and she drew those drapes. Amelia Bedelia marked off about the drapes. "Now what?" "Put the lights out when you finish in the living room." Amelia Bedelia thought about this a minute. She switched off the lights. Then she carefully unscrewed each bulb. And Amelia Bedelia put the lights out. So those things need to be aired out too, just like pillows and babies. Oh, I do have a lot to learn. My pie, exclaimed Amelia Bedelia. She hurried to the kitchen. Just right. She took the pie out of the oven and put it on the table to cool. Then she looked at the list again. The meat market will deliver a steak and a chicken. Please trim the fat before you put the steak in the ice box. And please dress the chicken. You don't often hear that, children, dressing the chicken, but we'll see what she does. When the meat arrived, Amelia Bedelia opened the bag. She looked at the steak for a long time. Yes, that will do nicely. Amelia Bedelia got some lace and bits of ribbon. And Amelia Bedelia trimmed that fat before she put the steak in the ice box. Now I must dress the chicken. I wonder if she wants a he chicken or a she chicken, said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia went right to work. Soon the chicken was finished. Amelia Bedelia heard the door open. "Ah, the folks are back," she said. She rushed out to meet them. "Amelia Bedelia, why are all the light bulbs outside?" asked Mr. Rogers. "Well, the list just said to put the lights out. Didn't send to bring them back in. Oh, I do hope they didn't get aired too long." "Amelia Bedelia, the sun will fade the furniture. I asked you to draw the drapes," said Mrs. Rogers. I did, see?" said Amelia Bedelia. She held up her picture. Then Mrs. Rogers saw the furniture. "The furniture!" she cried. "Oh, did I dust it well enough?" asked Amelia Bedelia. "That's such nice dusting powder." Mrs. Rogers went to wash her hands. "I say," she called, "these are very unusual towels." Mrs. Rogers dashed into the bathroom. "Oh, my best towels," she said. "Didn't I change them enough?" asked Amelia Bedelia. "Well, was the meat delivered?" asked Mrs. Rogers. "Yes," said Amelia Bedelia. "I trimmed the fat just like you said. Does look nice." Mrs. Rogers rushed to the ice box. She opened it. "Lace? Ribbons? Oh, dear," said Mrs. Rogers. "The chicken. You dressed the chicken?" asked Mrs. Rogers. "Yes, and I found the nicest box to put him in," said Amelia Bedelia. "Box!" exclaimed Mrs. Rogers. Mrs. Rogers hurried over to the box. She lifted the lid. There lay the chicken, and he was dressed just as nicely as he could be. Mrs. Rogers was angry. She was very angry. She opened her mouth. Mrs. Rogers meant to tell Amelia Bedelia she was fired. But before she could get the words out, Mr. Rogers put something in her mouth. It was so good, Mrs. Rogers forgot about being angry. "Lemon meringue pie," she exclaimed. "I made it to surprise you," said Amelia Bedelia happily. So right then and there, Mr. and Mrs. Rogers decided that Amelia Bedelia must stay, and so she did. Mrs. Rogers learned to say undust the furniture, unlight the lights, close the drapes, and things like that. Mr. Rogers didn't care if Amelia Bedelia trimmed all of his steak with lace. All he cared about was having her there to make lemon meringue pie. Now, children, I know that you all, or I'm pretty sure you all are different ages. So some of these stories are for very young children and some for older ones. So I hope you all don't mind listening to the ones that aren't really for you. But they all have beautiful pictures anyway. This is called I Am a Bunny, written by Ole Rissom and illustrated by Richard Scarry from 1963. I am a bunny. My name is Nicholas. I live in a hollow tree. In the spring, I like to pick flowers. I chase the butterflies, and the butterflies chase me. In the summer, I like to lie in the sun and watch the birds. And I like to watch the frogs in the pond. When it rains, I keep dry under a toadstool. I blow the dandelion seeds into the air. And in the fall, I like to watch the leaves falling from the trees. I watch the animals getting ready for winter. And now, when the winter comes, I watch the snow falling from the sky. Then I curl up in my hollow tree and dream about spring. This next story is about Owen. It's called Owen, written and illustrated by Kevin Hanks from 1993. Now, just before I begin, I bet some of you had blankets that you liked when you were little, and you liked to carry them around, and you didn't like to give them up when the time came. That's what this story is about. Owen had a fuzzy yellow blanket. He'd had it since he was a baby. He loved it with all his heart. Fuzzy goes where I go, said Owen, and Fuzzy did. Upstairs, downstairs, in between, inside, outside, upside down. Fuzzy likes what I like, said Owen, and Fuzzy did. Orange juice, grape juice, chocolate milk, ice cream, peanut butter, applesauce cake. Isn't he getting a little old to be carrying that thing around? Asked Mrs. Tweezers. Haven't you heard of the blanket fairy? Owen's parents hadn't. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. She lived next. She lives next door. She's looking over the fence there, and he's trying to get away with the blanket. That night, Owen's parents told Owen to put Fuzzy under his pillow. In the morning, Fuzzy would be gone, but the blanket fairy would leave an absolutely wonderful, positively perfect, especially terrific big boy gift in its place. Owen stuffed Fuzzy inside his pajama pants and went to sleep. No blanket fairy, said Owen in the morning. No kidding, said Owen's mother. No wonder, said Owen's father. Fuzzy's dirty, said Owen's mother. Fuzzy's torn and ratty, said Owen's father. No, said Owen. Fuzzy is perfect, and Fuzzy was. Fuzzy played Captain Plunger with Owen. Fuzzy helped Owen become invisible. And Fuzzy was essential when it came to nail clippings and haircuts and trips to the dentist. Can't be a baby forever, said Mrs. Tweezers. Haven't you heard of the vinegar trick? Owen's parents hadn't. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. When Owen wasn't looking, his father dipped Owen's favorite corner of Fuzzy into a jar of vinegar. Owen sniffed it and smelled it and sniffed it. He picked a new favorite corner. Then he rubbed the smelly corner all around his sandbox, buried it in the garden, and dug it up again. Good as new, said Owen. Fuzzy wasn't very fuzzy anymore, but Owen didn't mind. He carried it, wore it, and dragged it. He sucked it, hugged it, and twisted it. What are we going to do? Asked Owen's mother. School is starting soon, said Owen's father. Can't bring a blanket to school, said Mrs. Tweezers. Haven't you heard of just saying no? Well, Owen's parents hadn't heard of that. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. I have to bring Fuzzy to school, said Owen. No, said Owen's mother. No, said Owen's father. Owen buried his face in Fuzzy. He started to cry and would not stop. Well, don't worry, said Owen's mother. It'll be all right, said Owen's father. And then suddenly, Owen's mother said, I have an idea. It was an absolutely wonderful, positively perfect, especially terrific idea. First she snipped, and then she sewed, and then she snipped again and sewed some more. Snip, 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 sew. Dry your eyes, wipe your nose. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Now Owen carries one of his not-so-fuzzy handkerchiefs with him wherever he goes. And Mrs. Tweezers doesn't say a thing. Well, children, this next book is called The Lion's Bed by Diane Redfield Massey. And it's for Timmy, dedicated to Timmy. Hornbill loved his green vine house in the top of the mango tree. The jungle is peaceful here, said Hornbill, biting on a mango seed. We all live together quietly, as friends should. He waved to Anteater far below, busily collecting ants. 5,653, said Anteater. Not bad for a morning's work. He patted his ant basket with pride. Well, that's very good, said Hornbill. Anteater smiled. It's mangoes for you, ants for me, he said, twirling his ant basket, and he did a little dance in the grass. Oh, it's coconuts for monkeys, grass for elephants, roots for peccaries, and ants for me, sang Anteater. Ants, delicious ants for me. Hornbill stretched his wings and yawned. If we all ate the same thing, we'd be fighting and quarreling over who was getting the most, said Anteater. Thank heavens no one else likes ants. He fastened a latch on his basket and sat down to rest in the shade. You haven't mentioned me, said Python, looking down from the vine above him. You haven't mentioned what I eat. Well, who knows what you eat, said Anteater. You're always asleep up there. Not always, said Python. Anyway, you don't eat ants, and that's all I care about, said Anteater. Suddenly, Elephant pushed his trunk through the vines. The peccaries are running through the grass, he said. They're very excited about something. They're always excited, said the monkeys. Imagine being excited over roots. They dropped their coconuts to the ground and hurried down to find them. The peccaries came running under the trees. The lion's coming, the lion's coming, they cried, stumbling over the roots, and they fell in the grass. The lion, said the monkeys. He's coming to live in our part of the jungle, said a peccary. That's what the birds told us. Ooh, let's hide, cried the monkeys. Why is he coming here? Asked the hornbill. He flew down and landed on a stone. Maybe there's more to eat over here, said Elephant. More of us, whimpered the monkeys. Or us, squealed the peccaries, and they covered their eyes with their hooves. The monkeys were scrambling up in the trees. Python closed his yellow-green eyes. He won't bother me, he hissed. I'm beginning to wish, said Anteater, that lions liked ants. Well, they don't, said Python. They like anteaters. Heavens, said Anteater. I'm going to make my house stronger. How? Asked Hornbill. With vines, grass, and sticks? That's not strong enough to keep the lions out, called the monkeys. You'll have to hide in the trees like us. I can't climb trees, said Anteater. Neither can we, cried the peccaries. Anyway, said Anteater, you monkeys can't stay up there forever. How will you get the cracked coconuts in the grass? Oh, sighed the monkeys, we hadn't thought of that. Elephants are too big to hide, said Elephant. What will I do? And he trumpeted loudly. The monkeys were quarreling among themselves, and the peccaries began to cry. Quiet! Quiet, shouted Hornbill. Will everyone please be quiet? Everyone was quiet. Only the birds in the far-off trees were singing. Now, said Hornbill, you should all be ashamed. You're only thinking of yourselves, and here we are all friends. The monkeys came down to the lower branches, and Python opened his eyes. The peccaries peeked out between the vines, and Elephant sat down in the grass. "What can we do?" asked Anteater. "By ourselves we can't do much, but if we all work together, maybe we can do something." "Oh, let's have a meeting," said Anteater. "Here," said Elephant. The peccaries came out from under the vines, and the monkeys jumped down behind them. "First of all," said Hornbill, "we've got to decide what each of us is best at." "Well, I'm best with ants," said Anteater. "We're best with coconuts," said the monkeys. "I'm good at shaking things with my trunk," said Elephant. "We're good at running," said the peccaries. "And I'm best at singing," said Hornbill. "Squawking," said Python. "But what are you best at?" said Anteater. "Nothing." "That isn't true," said Python. "I'm best at something, but I won't say what it is." "Oh, who cares?" said Anteater. "Please," said Hornbill, "we mustn't quarrel now. The lion will be here soon, and we've got to be ready." Hornbill hopped over to the vines hanging from his mango tree. "We'll make a great big bed right here under the vines." "A bed?" said everyone. "What for?" "For the lion, of course," said Hornbill. "A bed for the lion." "I'll explain in a minute," said Hornbill. "Hurry." They hurried about bringing grass and leaves, and they made a big, soft bed. "Perfect," said Hornbill. "Well, are we making a bed so the lion can have a good night's rest before he eats us all for breakfast?" said Anteater. "Who said anything about a rest?" And he whispered his plan to his friends. "We'll pick the coconuts," shouted the monkeys, and they scampered off through the trees. "I'll bring the ants," said Anteater, and he hid with his ant basket in the grass. "We'll get ready to run," said the peccaries, and they hid behind the vines. "And I'll wait behind the mango tree," said Elephant, "where the lion won't see me." "Good," said Hornbill. "I'll sit above my house." And Python said nothing at all. His head was tucked under his great green coils. "He's asleep," said Anteater. The sun went down behind the trees, and the moon came up round and white. "The big grass bed looks silver in the moonlight," whispered Anteater. "Shh," said Hornbill. "I can see the lion coming through the trees." The lion was purring and licking his chops. "Ah, what a breakfast I'll have. But first I'll find a place to spend the night." He pushed his way through the dark trumpet vines and stood before the bed. "What's this?" he roared. "A big grass bed in the middle of the jungle? I'll try it out for size." He laid down and curled his great tail about him. "Perfect," he purred. "I'll have a good night's rest." And soon he was fast asleep. "Squawk, squawk, 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 screech, screech, squawk." "Good grief," roared the lion. "What's that?" "It's me singing," said Hornbill. "It's the middle of the night," growled the lion. "Quiet." Thump, thump, bump, 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 bong. "Ouch," roared the lion. "What's going on around here?" "The coconuts are falling off the trees again," said Hornbill. "They always do that at night." "Good heavens!" He turned over and closed his eyes. Trample, 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 trample. "Ooh," howled the lion. "Something's trampling over my bed." "Those are just the peccaries," said Hornbill. "They run back and forth all night long." "Why?" asked the lion. "You've heard of sleepwalking, haven't you?" said Hornbill. "This is sleep running." "Oh," sighed the lion. The mango tree began to shake. The vines were swinging back and forth. "What's wrong with the trees?" said the lion, holding his head. "Those are shaky trees. They do that all the time." "They do?" The lion turned over and sat up again. "Something's crawling in my bed," he yelled. "Those are just ants," said Hornbill. "Ants? We have millions of ants in this part of the jungle," yawned Hornbill. "I mean billions, or is it trillions?" The lion growled and closed his eyes. At once something large and heavy fell down from above. "Help!" roared the lion. "Something's got me! Help! Help!" He leaped from the bed. "I'm going back where I came from. No lion would live in a place like this." And he hurried away through the trees. "He's gone!" shouted the peccaries, running out from the vines. "He's gone!" cried the monkeys, swinging down to the grass. "He'll never be back," said the elephant. "I've got to find my ants all over again, but it was worth it." Hooray! Cried Hornbill, the lion's gone. But then he stopped. What was that got him last? I don't know, said Anteater. Guess who? Said Python, climbing up his vine. Python, cried everyone. It was you. Of course it was me. That's what I could do. Well, said Anteater, not bad at all. Hooray for Python, and hooray for us all. Anteater rubbed his tired eyes. I'm going to sleep. Whew. Good night, everybody, said Hornbill. He flew up into his mango tree and found his leafy bed. Good night, Hornbill, yawned his friends. Sleep well. And they all slept soundly under the moon in their peaceful, green-vined jungle. Children, I hope you liked those stories. I hope some of them weren't too babyish, but you'll love the drawings. So thank you for coming to the Story Place. I'm Anne Marie Battistone. This has been Norfolk Public Access. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.